Hi, SkySun here from SkySunStudios.com, and today I'd like to do vid 3 of my EQ tutorial series, and in this video I'd like to cover shelving filters. Shelving filters they can be very useful, and they're a little bit milder than pass filters, and they behave a little differently than peaking filters too. So for starters, I think I'll go to the low shelving. Let me make it a shelving filter. This filter in the Pro EQ, it can be a peaking filter or it can be a shelving filter of differing slopes even. But mainly you can choose between a peaking filter or a shelving filter. Right here, it gives you that option. So I'll go to a 6 dB shelf, and this low frequency shelving filter here, I'll engage it and I'll turn the gain up. All right, so when you look at the display here, what you're seeing is different from a peaking filter, because if you look, let me turn that back off. Sorry about that. All right, so if you look, the frequencies below this shelving filter, they're boosted a little and then a little more and then a little more. So below this shelving filter, this low shelving filter, below it, it boosts frequencies gradually as you progress across the frequency spectrum. So why is that so great? I mean, why is there some mathematician somewhere who created an algorithm for a filter that we know as a shelving filter? Well, shelving filters, because of their behavior, because of their attitude, they can sound very natural. They can change your audio in a way that's not very noticeable. It's not obvious. It's probably not going to add a lot of noise. It's not going to add a lot of artifacts usually. So shelving filters can be useful when you don't want to do so much as, say, a high pass filter. You don't want to necessarily cut all of this out, maybe. Then instead of a high pass filter, you can use a shelving filter here, and you could cut kind of like the high pass filter, but it's going to be milder. It's going to be more gradual. It's basically a little smoother than your pass filters, and so it can be very useful on vocals. It can be useful on, let's see, guitars, like maybe an acoustic guitar or even a piano. If you want to turn down some of the low end of a piano so that it gets out of the way of your bass guitar, that's a great time to maybe try a shelving filter. All right, so let me move on to a high shelving filter. This high shelf here. How about boosting a little bit of the higher frequencies for a little more presence, a little more brilliance maybe. Maybe if you want to make something seem a little closer to the listener, you can do that naturally, again, with a shelving filter. All right, so let me turn the frequency knob down. You will see that it can boost, but it gradually boosts a little more, and it's very mild, and it's not going to affect the natural sound of your source, of your recording. It's not going to affect your recording too much. Now, do you want to boost something like this with a shelving filter? Probably not, because up here it's going to be boosting a lot of frequencies. It might boost hiss, it might boost noise that got into the recording. So shelving filters, you might not want to be too extravagant. You may not want to be too aggressive with a shelving filter, but nevertheless, a shelving filter, it can also soften the highs a little bit in a natural way, or it can make something seem a little further away if you were to use a high shelving filter like this. So there's a lot of different practical uses for shelving filters. And finally, I would like to show you how you can change a shelving filter into something a little more aggressive. You can go to a 12 dB shelf, and this, if you will look here, basically it's going to be a little more aggressive. It's going to affect frequencies below it a little more quickly as you go down the frequency spectrum. And of course, you could even go as far as a 24 dB shelf, and that is even sharper, even more aggressive still. Now, I would probably be careful with shelves at 24 dB. They can be pretty extreme. They can change the natural sound of a recording, and sometimes artifacts can happen with real aggressive types of filters, okay? So beware of that. I would probably recommend to stick with a 6 dB shelf or a 12 dB shelf, depending. And you could use a 24 dB shelf here and there, but if you use them all over the place on everything in your song, then it's probably going to end up sounding pretty processed. It might sound unnatural. You might have some artifacts that are audible. So when it comes to filters, I usually stick between 6 and 12 dB, and even with pass filters, I rarely go past 12 dB per octave, maybe 24 dB per octave on a couple things in a mix, just to really get rid of some low end that I don't want. But I certainly don't use a 24 decibel per octave filter on everything in my mix. The less processing you can do to make it sound good, the more true your audio will represent the recording. Okay, so there's another little tip tossed in there. And so that covers shelving filters. Remember, you can change this from a shelving filter back to a peaking filter if you need to use it for a peaking filter. So in the Pro EQ, you have a low shelf, and you also have a high shelving filter that you can also change the algorithm. You can change the aggressiveness or the slope of the filter with these choices here, this little menu. All right, so that covers shelving filters. If you have any questions, feel free to post them below the video. Thanks for watching. Come back for more from SkySun.